Hi, everyone. My name's Paul Scalzo with Scalzo Commercial New Development, and I'm very excited today. I have Tony DiCamillo with us. Hi, Tony.
Hello.
And Tony is out of our White Plains office, and he's also our top commercial agent every year in a row. I don't know. He just seems to do it every year. And today we were going to talk about some of the areas of concern that a seller or landlord should have on their mind. So, Tony, you gave me a little outline, and you want to talk about the listing price first. So why don't we dive right into the listing price?
Yeah, let's start off with the listing price. Okay, during solicitation of exclusive listings, a lot of brokers will sometimes suggest an inflated listing price to obtain the listing.
Mm-hmm.
All of this does one thing for the seller. It extends the amount of time that they do not have the possibility of a sale or leasing a space. So the end result, when a broker comes in and asks or suggests an inflated price, it's going to cost the seller maybe 6 months of wasted time, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. And I'm sure no one wants to be in that situation. What I strongly suggest is before you give a broker a listing price, before you give a broker any listing price that you may have in your mind, ask for a property value evaluation. And at least so you can get a realistic number, a number that will make you happy and a number that will be fair to the potential buyer.
So I have a couple questions on that. So a couple things come to my mind, and it always seems that the seller is going to have one price in their mind, irregardless of what it is, because they feel that somebody's going to come along with some need that may not be out there. But the other thing, this is what I want you to talk about, is most of the time they have to get an appraisal, especially on improved property, right? Mm-hmm. So how do if the seller has a price that he wants, but the appraisal comes in lower, what typically happens?
Okay, well, there's a lot of different ways you can evaluate a property. You can do it based on the current marketplace, what similar properties are selling for on a per square foot basis. Mm-hmm. If it's a property that you're selling that has tenants and has a rent roll, you can evaluate the property by what the rent roll is minus expenses and figure out what the NOI is going to be. Later in this podcast, I'm going to get into the cost of money, but I'm just going to mention it again now, in that with the increasing cost of money, people are going to be looking at, besides NOI, they're going to be looking at cash-on-cash returns, which I'm not going to get into the elements of that, but it's very important because you just ultimately, if you price a property too high, especially in the upcoming market with the changes that are happening in interest rates, it's just going to waste a lot of time, and your property's going to sit there, and you're not going to be able to sell.
So let's talk about that. So a property goes on the market for the first time, and you're going out and you're getting exposure for it. It's like it's new on the market. Everybody's going to look at it. So let's talk about the exposure, and you can even bleed the price into that answer if you want.
Okay. This is the next subject that we're going to be talking about is limited exposure.
Okay.
Now, the problem with a lot of brokerage firms, particularly the larger ones, is that when they put a property on the market, they do not market it fully to other agencies and other brokers for a certain period of time because they're looking to acquire what's called a dual agency, where they will get both ends of the commission, the buyer side and the seller side. That's something that, as a seller, you should definitely discuss the marketing efforts that are going to be made and when they're going to be made.
Yeah, you definitely should ask the question to the broker on that.
Right, because most brokers won't bring that up if you don't ask. Yeah. So that's an important element.
And hidden in the contract could be some language that gives them the right to do that. You know what? That happens all the time. I just had a call on that where nobody knew it was on the market even. So they try to keep it in-house.
Especially when a listing is first taken by some of these firms, because What you should be looking for as a seller or as a landlord is 100% exposure.
Right.
And that's what separates one brokerage firm from another.
Yeah, I agree. And co-broking. So you want to just maybe define what how much a co-broke should happen? Let's say you take a listing at 6%. What would you offer?
Normally what I do personally is I split it 50-50.
Yeah, good. Okay.
And that's, that's the way you're going to attract more. See, let's put it this way. A broker's looking for a property. They're representing a buyer. They're looking for properties. If they are not being fairly treated, they're going to steer the buyer away from that property to another property. So you're really, you want to be involved with a broker that is fair to anybody who would be a possible co-broke. That's crucial.
Okay. Let's go on to qualifying buyers and tenants, which I know is something that's very, very important. You want to talk about how you do it and what they should look out for? What a buyer,
I think that's an important part of being a successful broker, is that you really have to know who your buyers are and who your potential tenants are. And there's, especially when you get into leasing out a property, and probably the most difficult of all is a retail property.
Yeah.
Because with retail properties, there are a lot of dreamers out there that have a concept in mind, but do not have the resources to move forward properly, to do a build out, to have the operating capital necessary to make a business successful. So, and it's the same thing with buyers also, because there's a lot of buyers out there that just don't have the resources to get financing. And with banks today are very thorough in checking credit. If a person's buying a property and it's $2 million, and they're going to have to put down 30% cash, and their credentials are going to have to be strong. Now, you don't want your client, who you have an exclusive with, going through the process of hiring an attorney to put the contract together, which is costly, if the buyer is not qualified.
Right.
So qualifying your buyer, qualifying your tenant is crucial. And prospects have to be pre-screened prior to submitting LOIs or offers.
So I don't know if you want to go into it, but what do you ask? Do you make them go to a bank and get a pre-qual letter? Do you ask them for a copy of their bank statement? How do you go about it when you do it, Tony?
Okay, there are many different ways you can do it. I mean, you can do it by checking their credentials and having them, if it's a tenant, there's certain a credit checklist that you'd have to go down to supply financials, past credit ratings, et cetera. When it comes to acquiring a property, you may want to go as far as asking for proof of funds. And that would be a statement from the bank or a copy of a statement with, of course, the account numbers crossed out, and showing that they have the resources necessary. Now, particularly when you get into land development, which our firm specializes in. With land development, you may get some small to medium-sized developers who aren't aware of the amount of money they'll need up front. And if a project is hypothetically $30 million to build, a bank's going to require that they come up with 30% of that up front in cash before they even apply for construction financing. So a lot of these developers that think they're capable, once they hear that, they just pull out and they say, well, we don't have that kind of resources.
Right, so it pays to do that up front, for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Pre-screening is very important in every element, from buying of existing properties with rent rolls to land development to even a prospective tenant that you're trying to lease space to.
So the last thing we're going to do is the cost of money. And on the way here today, I heard that there's another 0.75% rate hike going to happen in the government. We just had 0.75% maybe 2 weeks ago. Tell me, what that means.
What it really means is that it's not where, I mean, currently the market is changing already, and with the increase of interest rates, which are probably approaching 6%, it's a whole different ball game where you could have sold a building at a 5.5 cap, a 6 cap in the past. The cap rate is important, but it's only part one.
Right.
Part two is going to be the cash on cash return, and you can and very easily you can have a 6 cap, and you can ultimately have a return because of the cost of money of 2%, which is well below what is satisfactory for a potential buyer. So that is that's crucial. That's crucial because that's going to be an element that's going to be more and more important over the next.
But that's out
6
of
months
everybody's
to a year.
control. So, if you had to sell a property, it would behoove them to do it sooner than later,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Well, here's the problem with what's happening with the cost of money. The problem is that the seller is always behind the buyer in what's currently happening in the marketplace. The seller's still thinking back 6 months ago, and the buyer is thinking 6 months ahead.
Right.
So
right.
they're
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, they're ultimately a year apart.
Yeah,
when
yeah.
it comes to the logic behind
Yeah.
selling the property. So the bottom line is that they're going to have to probably at some point lower their expectations in regard to price.
Yeah, makes sense. And things are changing all the time. So what we may do today might not have been something we did 60 days ago because a couple events have happened in the marketplace. So just to kind of summarize.
Okay,
Yeah.
And summarize everything, I think what a seller or a landlord should have in mind is that they want to hire a broker that has their best interest in mind. Someone that will list your property at a realistic price, and someone that will market your property to qualified potential users, investors, and real estate brokers. Now, where we pride ourselves at Scalzo Commercial is that we have the expertise and the integrity to properly price your property, and will initiate an immediate, all-encompassing marketing effort. Our track record stands for itself.
All right. And I want to thank Tony for coming in today and spending a few minutes about the pitfalls and things, concerns that a seller and owner have to look for. So thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.